Our co-hosts on this fine Thursday morning include New York Times best-selling author John Gilstrap.
Good morning.
Or as he sometimes refers to himself in the past as Little Johnny Gilstrap.
Well, that was, yes, back in the past. My mother called me Johnny, and my wife calls me Johnny.
Also, Maddie Harvey is with us as well. Matt, good morning to you.
Nobody's called me Maddie.
When you were a little kid, your mom didn't call you Maddie?
No.
No? What did she call you? Matthew. Oh, formal name.
Yeah.
When you were in trouble, do you have a middle name? Were you all three names when you were in trouble?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
It's my middle name's Lee. Matthew Lee Harvey.
That sounds like a NASCAR driver. That's a great name.
When I heard John Thomas Gilstrap get in the house,
wait a minute.
I was in trouble.
Most people put the Oswald on the end of that. They pick up
Matthew Lee Harvey Oswald.
and I'm like, oh my God. That one always. Like,
oh, she had a bit of a sense of humor then, didn't she? Huh?
No, not. Well, she does, but not with her baby boy's name.
That might be up there with a boy named Sue, right? Maybe she was just trying to toughen you up.
It worked.
Our guest in this segment is Steve Roberts. He is the president of the West Virginia Chamber of Commerce. Steve, welcome back. Great to have you with us again.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm looking forward, Rob, to talking to you and to John Thomas and Matthew Lee. So I can't wait to have a conversation. I hope everybody is well, and thank you for having me on.
You are good, sir. That's you picked up on the middle names. I'm sure you probably committed them to memory, and you went right at it with it. That's why you're good, man, right? You're in that position for a reason.
Well, you know, I grew up as everything but from Stevie to Stephen Glenn to my father's name was Swanson, and people would often say Swanson, or we've all experienced those things. We can all relate.
Well, that's cool. I can't tell you the names I was called as a kid because the FCC has a lot of restrictions about that.
Well, I got that from my sister mostly. So,
Steve, I want to talk to you about an editorial you recently did that ran around the Charleston area in the Gazette about West Virginia and such. Could you summarize that editorial for us that you wrote?
Yes, and again, thank you for giving me the opportunity. So I just put together what turned out to be more words than I wanted it to be, to say that the things the legislature has worked on have been important, but we can do two things at once, and that we should be reminded we still have big issues in West Virginia, and that the solutions or the beginnings of the solutions are pending in the legislature. So I talk about the importance of the business climate. I talked about education, and I think when you talk about education, you're sort of automatically talking about workforce readiness, and then I talk about daycare. And these were not the words of Lincoln. I took too many words to say what I wanted to say. But what it has done is kind of get my mind moving and get me stimulated to probably do another round. And for the sake of your listeners, I'll say I also cited some pending legislation. So the point is, or if I may jump to a quick point,
certainly.
West Virginia is not creating jobs fast enough. In all of the polling we are seeing, West Virginia voters, West Virginia residents would like to see more attention to economic development and job creation. They really identify that as the number one problem. We think, by the way, that our health issues, our population issues are all driven by whether there are jobs and whether people have good jobs, and that getting this employment picture right is really, really important. We are beginning to go a little bit the wrong way on employment in West Virginia. 2024, the end of 2024 has seen a downturn from 2023. And we're off again. We only have 2 months worth of data for 2025. January and February data is in. We're off again. So I don't want to be negative, but we are concerned. West Virginia and only West Virginia and South Dakota, according to the U.S. Department of Labor, had the slowest growth, job growth in the nation. And we want to have a conversation about that. Why is that? And the reason we want to have the conversation is because we want to get input on solutions. We have ideas for solutions, but we're not saying that only the Chamber of Commerce has the best ideas. We think there are many good ideas coming out of the legislature. There are many good ideas available from the governor's office. And there are many good ideas that you have or your listeners have. Let's get those ideas on the table and focus on those things. And that's a little bit why I wrote that op-ed.
Steve, I know my co-host will have some questions for you as well, but I want to start off first with the daycare issue. And when I was, maybe in the 90s probably, I remember this issue coming to the forefront during the Clinton administration. And Republicans in general, the business community in general, were against any kind of daycare subsidies or putting the onus on business to deal with the daycare problems. They felt that was that's the individual who had the kids, that's their responsibility to take care of the kids and find daycare. We're just providing the job. That seems to be coming around a little bit from the business community. And proof of that is you bringing it up in an editorial, and that it was mentioned a lot last year, and especially when Governor Justice was in that chair too, that we need to do something to address this daycare issue. Is that being taken seriously by this legislature, do you think?
First I would say how things have changed, and circumstances will change things. Necessity is the mother of invention kind of applies here. So let me explain that for a moment. Maybe two quick points. One is that in West Virginia, we have the lowest workforce participation rate in the country. So why are people not able to get up and go to work? Well, one of the impediments, and we believe this to be a real impediment, not an excuse, but a real impediment, is that the cost of daycare in West Virginia, the average cost is $800 per month per child. And many families simply can't afford to have a spouse who would like to work go to work because the cost of daycare would be so high. So employers are struggling to find workers. We have, according to data provided by Workforce West Virginia, we have almost 40,000 job openings in West Virginia. There is no question. Every place I go, employers say my big issue is replacing my workforce. If somebody retires on me, I'm in real trouble because I'm having trouble replacing my workforce. And so employers are now on the page of, look, if we can help people solve their daycare problem and get them into the workforce, we want to do that. I'll tell you a very quick story just to point out that this cuts across all strata. We had a meeting. Our office periodically just goes out and meets with various employers. We had a meeting that included several doctors. And somebody in the group said, well, what's been your biggest challenge? Many of you are not from West Virginia. You've come here. What's been man, they all just blurted out at the same time. Child care, finding a place, and if you're a doctor, you don't work 9 to 5. If we have to work in the middle of the night or work evenings, if you don't have family to take care of your child, you are in trouble. We just don't have the facilities to take care of our children, and we don't have them to take care of our children when we need to take care of them. So that's why the employer community has changed its tune on this. We do talk to people at the legislature who say, I just think that's a family responsibility. And while we respect that point of view, we're at the same time thinking, but employers are really eager to get people working for them, and they're willing to help now in ways that maybe in the past they weren't. So bills are pending in the legislature. The legislature is interested in this topic. Delegate Kathy Hess-Krause has a bill that she's working on, and we're working with her on that. That would be a tri-share bill. And let me just briefly explain tri-share. So we have a point of view around here that when you find something that works in another state, take a look at it. Maybe it'll work here. We don't always have to reinvent the wheel. And tri-share means that there would be costs for child care would be divided between an employer, an employee, and potentially a governmental entity. And we propose a small contribution from government, a small contribution from the employee, and maybe even slightly larger contribution from the employer to help pay for daycare or child care for a potential employee. This has worked very successfully in some other states. We think try it here. If it doesn't work, as one of our previous governors said, that's why the legislature comes back every year. If it doesn't work, change it, fix it, amend it, or do what needs to be done. But there is real interest in this in the legislature. And then there is real interest. Many employers would like to take advantage of tax credits for helping to develop child care. And there's real interest in expanding that tax credit to make it easier and apply to more employers. So there are there is some daylight here. There are some things that are on the table that could work. And we have 16 days of the legislative session to get some of those things moving. And we're optimistic. In our work, we tend to be optimists, because you've got to always have the feeling that you can get it done. You don't always get it done the first time you try, but you got to know that if you've got a good idea and you keep working it, you can get it done. And we're pretty optimistic about these two possibilities, even for this session and the 16 remaining days.
John?
Yeah, I've always been amazed in this area, which is a reasonably, certainly for West Virginia, it's a pretty affluent area, having come from Northern Virginia, where daycare centers grow like Dollar Generals grow here. You know, you have Children's World and KinderCare and, all those franchise daycare centers, and there aren't any here. And I have to think that demand breeds supply. And so where you're saying that there's this pent-up demand for daycare, I question whether that's actually there, because there's some good paying jobs. $800 a month. I don't even remember it's been a long time since I've had to pay daycare. It was expensive back when I was paying for it, so I don't know what it is adjusted for inflation. But I question whether or not that demand is actually there with so many people working from home and such.
Well, that's an interesting point, and what we perhaps some evidence that would point to the need is that the daycare facilities that we do have tend to be at capacity. Many of them have waiting lists now, and I may be speaking more of some other areas of the state. But we are aware that many of the daycare facilities that are available have waiting lists. In fact, we have a person who works here in our office who has their child on a waiting list to get into the particular place that works for them. And several of the churches that operate either daycare or preschool, pre-kindergarten kind of programs report to us that they've got waiting lists to get in. So probably the answer is it's just different in different parts of the state. That I can believe.
In Jefferson County, there's a big need. I think the number is cited around 900 spots are needed.
Yeah.
So it's a great opportunity for franchising, I would think, for somebody to open one of these. It would, or for several.
There may be a real opportunity there. Now, let me add.
I think it's the pay that gets them.
Pay is a huge. Well, we went right to the heart of the problem. Pay is a huge issue, but here back to the finding workers is also a huge issue because clearly the people who work in a daycare facility have to be special kind of people. They have to be people who check out well, and dependability is very, very big when you're caring for somebody else's child. They've got to know that when they go there, you're there to take their child. And so not only is there a challenge in paying for it, there's a challenge in finding people to work in it.
Well, my sister did this. She's 65, I think, in April. Same weekend as John's wife, by the way. She did this for her career, and it's everything that you say is true. The pay is not great. She didn't become wealthy doing it.
Right.
The responsibilities are enormous. The amount of knowledge that you have to have, both in terms of the medical and cleanup. And there's a lot
Strong
involved.
stomach.
Yes, for the pay involved, there's a lot involved, and for a lot of these franchises, Steve, and she doesn't have a bachelor's degree; she had an associate's degree. So you could, in her case, 20 years experience, but someone out of college comes in and they put that person in charge, and that person doesn't know what they're doing. I guess that's another argument for another day, but it's probably a good indication of why people don't stay in that field, I guess, is the point that I'm trying to make there, and why there's such an employee shortage. Unless your heart is in it, like my sister's was, there's not a lot of other reasons to stay in the field. It's just not that financially rewarding.
I would assume that you'd have to scale so much because you can only take so many children safely.
And there's a limitation to how many children can go.
Oh, and you can't charge $2,500 a month for child care in West Virginia.
You can only charge what the market will bear.
It's about $1,000 to $1,100 right now.
There's a lot of challenges to overcome
and
in that industry.
Yeah. So Steve, you mentioned when you were first talking here, you mentioned business climate, education, daycare, and then you said we have ideas for solutions, and then mentioned that other people have ideas as well for improving the business climate in West Virginia. I'm interested in hearing what your ideas are.
Well, let me start by saying that the legislature has done a lot of work to improve the business climate in West Virginia. Some examples would be eliminating the business franchise tax, reducing the corporate net income tax. Some of the legal reforms that have been done, particularly around workers' comp, those things have all taken big steps, big steps, giant steps to improve the business climate. And I think we've seen that taking those steps has helped stabilize our employment picture in West Virginia. So what other things could we do? Well, here's the thing. While we did lower the corporate net income tax, many of the states that we compete with for jobs either have no corporate net income tax or a lower corporate net income tax. So we've proposed, really for discussion purposes, we've asked the legislature to take a look at this. We know that revenue is always an issue, but is there a way to begin reducing the corporate net rate again and becoming more competitive? Could that be just another competitiveness issue that we can be taking a look at? Another one, particularly for small business, that we've proposed is let's look at the unemployment compensation wage base. West Virginia's Unemployment Compensation Trust Fund currently has a balance of $385 million. Now think about that. $385 million is the last reported number, and that's a current number, by the way. And that's just dead money. That money came from employers. That's money that employers don't have to use to buy product to sell or give raises to employees or hire somebody. And do we really need that much money in our state's Unemployment Compensation Trust Fund? So our proposal is fairly simple. It's just lower the wage base, we'd still collect the money we need. We'd still collect more than then is going out. And then you adjust if there's some sort of terrible economic downturn. Obviously, you adjust accordingly. But again, we think that particularly can help small employers, and that it could be an immediate improvement to the business climate.
And where would the $385 million go?
So the $385 million is what is currently in the state's unemployment compensation trust fund.
Right.
So it is there to pay unemployment compensation claims. So in our view, it wouldn't go anyplace. It would stay there. We just, instead of continuing to collect as much as we're collecting, we would just say, let's collect a little less, because that puts more money in employers' pockets and gives them more freedom to hire, purchase product, to grow and expand, or do whatever they choose to do.
Or give me a raise.
Or give a raise.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
You mentioned the workforce participation rate earlier, Stephen. We know that West Virginia's is not good. And some of the reasons I hear for that, one, the age of the state, and two, the drug abuse situation in the state. How much of that is an accurate reflection of the low workforce participation rate?
Well, those are probably all factors, but there are multiple factors. We do have one of the oldest populations in the nation. We do have, particularly in certain parts of the state, an overwhelming drug crisis. But we also have people who want to work and can't get to work because there's no, if you don't own a car and you live in most parts of West Virginia, there's not public transportation to get you to work. So we have people who can't work because there's no way to get there. We have people who have the wrong skill sets. Their skill sets don't match the jobs that are available. And so we're not at all saying that it's a one-level problem. It's a multi-level problem. But what we think is there are ways to start addressing the problem, and that child care would be one of the ways to begin to address the problem. There are a lot of people, and we know this from talking to those people, from going out and doing surveys and so forth, that there are a lot of people who would find it very helpful to be in the workforce. They would be improving their skill set. They would be adding to their social network. They would be, they wouldn't be at home, and they just would have more social interaction, and who would like to work, but who cannot go to work because there is no daycare. I think you've heard me tell this story, or maybe he's told you this story, but one of my colleagues,
I'm about 45 seconds, by the way, Steve.
Okay. A person who works right next to me has a wife who is a skilled medical professional. She had to quit her work when they had a second child.
Yep.
Because of child care.
And I'm sure that story has been repeated numerous times.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Hey, Thank you. You're not retiring anytime soon, are you?
I'm still at it, man. I'm leaving this interview and going to the Capitol, and love what I do, and really working with great people. There's a propensity to be critical, but I think most of the people who serve in the legislature want to see the right things happen. We just need to help keep pointing them in the right direction. Here are things that we really could solve and get ourselves on the right track.
Thank you, Steve. You're not allowed to retire until I do.
Well, let's talk about that.
Have a good day, sir.
You guys take care. John Thomas, Matthew Lee, you boys be good today. We'll see you later.
Yes, sir.
We are back with the Democratic State Party Chairman Delegate Mike Pushkin next.